Whether you're looking to leave a job that is no longer satisfying or you're wanting to re-enter the workforce, it's vitally important that you know exactly what your goals are. Are you wanting to work a certain number of years or create a job situation that you can do part-time at some point? My next guest doesn't mince words, but her experience and realistic perspective will arm you with the information that you need to be successful. Health, wellness, career, family, life, and the better side of 50. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Asking for a Friend. Today's guest is Julie Balke of the Balke Group. Julie is a strategic career advisor, workplace expert, and fierce partner for career transitioning professionals. She's also the author of the book, Stop Peeing on Your Shoes, Avoiding the 7 Mistakes That Screw Up Your Job Search. Her media appearances are just too lengthy to name, but she is a sought-after expert on TV and radio around the country. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
In all transparency, I want to say I was a client of the Balke Group in 2020 with a very happy ending. So kudos to the Balke Group and your team there.
Well, I am glad to hear that.
Yes, it was all good. I thought it might be kind of nice just to kind of kick things off is to tell us a little bit about your career path, because I know this isn't exactly what you started out doing early in your career.
You know, to that point, Michelle, I find that the happiest people in their careers are people whose career has taken a detour or two, or is somehow off the path that they thought it would be when they started their career at 22 years old. Because frankly, what do we know at 22 anyway? There's twists and turns that happen along the way. And for me, it was I spent my first 16 years in human resources. And I was constantly just amazed at how many people stay in jobs they hate. Stay in jobs that make them miserable, that make them less than ideal, fun to live with, be friends with. It affects your health. So staying in a job you don't like, to me, is optional, just like suffering is optional. And in human resources, I realized it was more common than not. So when I had the opportunity in the late 90s to move into being a career transition coach, I knew that that was something that I was meant to do. Back when I started my career, that wasn't even a thing. And then it became a thing. And I said, I think I'd be really good at that because I can help people figure out why they're stuck and help them move forward and give them the confidence and the kick in the seat of the pants to move forward. So I worked for a global career services provider for 10 years, working just with people who'd been let go. Then started my own thing in 2007 because I wanted to work outside of just the transition space. So for instance, when you think about a career life cycle, if you work for 40 years, just as a nice round number, and you only think about your career when you're in crisis or when you've been laid off or let go, it's like only thinking about your finances after you've declared bankruptcy. And so I thought there has to be a better way for people to be smart and strategic and forward-looking in their careers before that moment of crisis. Because when we are in a moment of crisis, oh my gosh, I've lost my job. Now what do? I guarantee you're not going to make your best decisions. And I saw it over and over again, working with people solely for 10 years who'd just been let go. And I thought, man, you are getting ready to make another mistake. And so when I founded the Balke Group, it was really to focus on how do we help people think strategically about their careers all the time, so that they're always moving forward and making the best move for them, given who they are. And we say that you evolve as a human from age 22 to 62. You're certainly not the same. So why should your career be the same? So your career has to evolve with you as you evolve. And the problem is no one ever taught us how to do that. And that's what we do.
I love it. And you're speaking my language because I went through this. And having been in the same industry for 26 years and then stepping outside of that, it's scary. but you have to know where your skill set is, but also what'll make you happy.
Exactly.
And on that note, I love the fact that you do focus on women's careers and career happiness. When you have a female client who's in this midlife place, what are you seeing most in terms of the support and advice that they need?
So first of all, the Bauke Group works with men and women from probably your late 20s, really through 60s when a lot of people still want to work. But what's interesting about our women clients and why I like them so much is that there's so many opportunities to help women improve how they think about themselves and their careers. And women face a separate set of challenges on top of the challenges that we all face at work, male or female. And part of it is, certainly confidence is a part of it, but depending on your profession, sometimes operating inside of a male dominated world for people who are in maybe non-traditional roles, dealing with work and family, dealing with an unsupportive spouse, dealing with all kinds of issues outside the workplace that make it hard for us to sometimes fully embrace the concept that we do have great worth at work. And then how do we move forward from that or with that? I find that some of the most amazing women with just wonderful backgrounds and experiences and qualifications really downplay it. And those same women will tell me, yeah, I work with a bunch of guys who I'm way more qualified than, and they think they're all that, and they think they're better than they are in a lot of cases. I'm having a hard time just embracing what I truly bring to the table, let alone exaggerating it like many of my coworkers do. And so helping a woman truly embrace and understand and articulate what it is that she has done, is qualified for, and wants to do next. We're taught to be humble. And I say when it comes to work, when it's talking about what you've actually accomplished, this is not the time to be humble. And there's ways to do that that aren't braggy, but we really have to embrace who we are and what we've accomplished in order to get more of what we want.
You made a comment to me when we spoke earlier in the week about women living longer and either wanting to keep working or now they need to work.
Yeah.
What kind of process do you put people through, men or women, to figure out, okay, what I enjoyed at 30 years old isn't necessarily satisfying to me at 55?
What we find a lot of times people are like, well, what assessments are you going to have me take? I'll say, well, maybe none. Most of us have been assessed to death through our corporate lives. And we find that if we ask you the right questions, you already have the answers. There isn't an answer on page 6 of an assessment that's going to tell you who you are and who you ought to be. It's really inside of you. And part of it is taking a look back. The first thing you want to do is take a look back. Where have you been the most successful? How have you been the most successful? When were you the happiest? And then the other side of that too, when did you really feel like you were wearing shoes that didn't fit? When were you really not feeling successful? And there's a ton of clues right in there. And so taking that backward look is important. Then look around now. What's important to you right now? That set of answers is really important in informing what your next step should be. And so your past can give you some clues really as to, what you may want to do more of moving forward. But where you are now, you need to look at what's important to me right now. Who am I today that maybe I wasn't 5, 10, 15 years ago? How have my values and priorities changed? If 10 years ago you had, 5-year-olds running around, now they're 15 getting ready to drive. In 10 more years, they're going to be gone. We advocate a look back, look around, and look forward approach. So the conversation is different if you're 35 versus if you're 55, because your career runway is different. You've got, when you're 35, you might have 25 to 30 years left to work. But when you're 55, it's a shorter runway. Because as I tell people who are younger, you are going to want to slow down. You are going to get tired. You are going to get more choosy in terms of what you want to do. And so you need to prepare for that. So don't expect to have the same everything when you're 60 as you did when you're 30. So the first question is, what's your career runway? Or what's the career runway you want to focus on? So if we work with a 35-year-old who says, I really just want to focus on the next 5 to 7 years. Okay. So what is your career runway? And then you take a look at what are the factors in your life that are going to impact the next decisions you make. Are you 55 and you need to find a high paying job and save like crazy? Or are you 55 and do you want to start building something that you can do on a part-time basis after you retire from full-time work? Because women live longer. And in a lot of cases, we are paid less, we saved less, we maybe went through a divorce and we didn't get maybe what we thought we should have. And so we're at a disadvantage moving forward. So we have to really think hard about our futures and what that means then backing into a career. You have to answer all of those big questions first. And I know that those questions are really, really scary and hard for us to think about, especially if we don't feel like we're in a good financial position. But career is about all kinds of things. Part of it is how we see our value, what we see our value as. Part of it is where we get our good feels. Or it could just be how we connect, the place we go to connect with others. Another big question is, what role does work play in your life? And that's another really big question because the answer is different for all of us.
Obviously the listeners can't see us, but as you were talking, my head nodding was genuine because this was some of the stuff I was contending with back in 2020. And it was reshifting my thought process around going after the job title, going after the salary, and really just looking at the job as a whole and it being a good fit and something that would bring me job satisfaction. And once I did that, it just opened everything up for me. So I love what you're saying. And you talked about maybe the person that has gone through a divorce, or maybe they haven't worked since they were 30. I want to know how someone leverages that life experience and that professional maturity that they have after raising a family and how they make that work for a company to be appealing to the hiring manager.
One of the mistakes we make is that we assume that anything we did that wasn't paid isn't of value. And that's nuts if you really think about it. I mean, since when does a paycheck determine your value? If you organized a fundraiser for your son's high school and it brought in, X hundreds of thousands of dollars, or it involved, the scope was this, that is a demonstration or an example of your ability to organize, influence, execute, lead others, especially others who may be volunteers. That's even harder. And, deliver something on time and ahead of expectations. Those sort of things that we do in a volunteer role, maybe while the kids are growing up. I think women like this that you're describing who are trying to come out of home and trying to get back to work are probably, really a couple feet in a hole in terms of their confidence, because they say things like, I was just a mom. I was just a stay-at-home mom.
Ugh.
Yes, you didn't get paid for that, but it doesn't mean what you did wasn't of value. Now, I will caution you, if you didn't do any volunteer work, you didn't, do anything outside of cooking meals and driving kids around, don't try to make that into, managed a family, blah, blah, blah. Because believe me, I know how hard that is, but that just sounds like you're reaching. And so my advice for women who are looking to leave the workforce to raise a family for a short period of time is always keep one hand in what you did. Maybe you can do some freelance or side work. Maybe you can simply just keep in touch with your network. One of my favorite phrases is, you don't always have to be employed, but you always must be employable. And once you walk away from that paid job, those skills, those things that you brought to your former employers, they don't go away. You're just using them differently. Part of it is keeping yourself employable. And it is harder if all you've done is, help the kids with homework, run them around, make dinner. Believe me, I am not minimizing that, because to me, that was exhausting. And I always worked. But I looked at stay-at-home moms who left their work, and I thought I couldn't do it. You have to know yourself, and not apologize for the choices you make. Instead, own them, but then start to talk about what you did in your past career, what you've done since you have not been getting a paycheck, and be able to connect those dots for people you're networking with and talking to as to how you think what you do is relevant moving forward. You can't expect people that you're networking with, let's say you're at the end of wanting to be home, and not working for a paycheck, and you want to transition back into that. You really have to own that and position yourself well and really get clear on what you want to do next. What do you want to do more of, less of, never again, and not put all of that responsibility on the person you're networking with, who might be very likely to say, yeah, you haven't worked in 10 years. I don't get it. The good news is here in 2022, and probably for as long as, you and I are going to be alive, there's going to be a talent shortage. And so companies, in the face of less supply, start changing how they hire. And they are more willing to look at people with a non-traditional background than they were before. So we're actually in a good spot for women who've been at home to reinvent themselves. But you have to do it with confidence.
Yeah. Again, let's not minimize volunteering.
No, of course not.
And I know a lot of people that are just really great at volunteering, and I think they need to leverage that if they want to get back into the workforce.
Yeah, and break it down by the skills that you exhibited, what you accomplished, the scope and scale of what you did. All of that is really important. And it also is a way for you to demonstrate that you've kept those skills intact or built new ones. Whether there was a paycheck attached to it or not is not relevant.
Right. You touched on it a little bit, but now that we're pretty much post-pandemic, what are you seeing in the job market right now?
It's just so interesting. When you look at employers, what they're trying to do is increase the supply because their demand is so high. So what that means is companies are considering and implementing phased retirement programs. In the past, when you got to be, let's say, 60 and you said, you know what, I'd like to go down to 20 hours a week, employers are like, nope, bye-bye. And then they'd replace you with somebody a lot younger and cheaper. Well, those people a lot younger and cheaper, they want something different out of work, and they aren't as plentiful as you think they are. So companies are allowing phased retirement to try to keep boomers in the marketplace. They are changing their background checking rules. So for instance, in the past, companies would maybe do a background check on a potential hire and they'd go back 7 years. Well, now they're saying, well, gee, everybody deserves a second chance. All of a sudden they've seen the light. And they are saying, okay, let's just go back a year or so, and we're going to give people a second chance. And this is all great. Now, something like that can go too far. You're not going to hire somebody to keep your books if they've been convicted of embezzlement. Right? I mean, there has to be some common sense used there. But if someone was in a bar fight and it turned into a felony 5 years ago and they've been clean ever since, why should that person not get a job? People with disabilities, people who work differently, want to work differently, stay-at-home moms who want to work part-time. Companies are being forced by the lack of supply to change the terms of their demand. And I sit back and watch it and I think this is wonderful because it creates opportunity for everyone.
That's great. I want to think that there isn't ageism in hiring. But after my own job search, I felt it. I saw it. So I know it's out there. I will say your group did a great job at helping me age-proof my appearance in terms of my resume, because I went back to 1989, which I didn't need to do. The other little thing, which still I laugh about today, is I was told that my email address made me look old. I had an AOL account, and I guess nothing says old like AOL. I did change my email, but I want to know, how do we still get the experience out there without making ourselves look like we couldn't compete with a 30-year-old?
When you look at ageism, of course there's ageism, of course there's sexism, of course there's racism. All those things exist. But there are things that you can do, just like the examples you gave, changing your email address, making your resume feel fresh and current, having a very up-to-date LinkedIn profile that shows that you get how things are done now. I had somebody 10 years ago say to me, and the guy was in his late 40s, yeah, I don't believe in LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a religion. It's not something you believe in or not. And if you tell me that you're not going to do LinkedIn, and if I hire you, if I see that you don't do LinkedIn, it's telling me that it's not out of the realm of possibility, that your ideas are also out of date, and that you won't embrace new ideas when I, as your employer, bring them to you. And so we send clues out, not only by our presence in the job market with our LinkedIn profiles, our resumes, our email addresses, but also I think as women, and believe me, I've seen this with men too. You know, when you get to a certain age, it's really easy to give up physically. It's harder to lose weight. It's kind of hard sometimes to find clothes that are age appropriate, that don't scream, I'm 21, but also don't say, you know, I'm living in an assisted living facility, that I'm matronly. And, you know, one of my things has been, I will not become matronly. I'm 62, but I'm like, I'm not going to become matronly. I'm going to keep my clothes, my hair, my glasses, my knowledge, my use of tools up to date. And so there are certain things you have control over. But if you're, you know, a guy and you're wearing a suit or a shirt, your buttons are popping because you've put on weight, your suit has dust on the shoulders because it hasn't been out of your closet since the Reagan administration, you know, you scream old. You know, we can talk all day about why we shouldn't judge a book by its cover and why that's unfair, but that's the useless conversation, because it's true. People do look at us and say, when you walk in and a 35-year-old goes, oh dear God, my mom wears her hair like that, or my mom has that skirt, or my mom, you know, it's the reverse of when we in our 60s or 50s look at, you know, a doctor walks in for our first appointment, a new doctor, and you're like, dear God, are you Doogie Howser? You know, are you 12? The reverse of that.
Yes.
I think we have to train ourselves to look at people for their qualifications and capabilities. But that first impression bias is alive and well. I don't care if you are overweight. You can still dress and behave in an up-to-date fashion. And you have to do this. Is it sexist? Is it ageist? Is it unfair? Yeah. But you're not going to win that battle. So if you appear up to date, if everything about you appears up to date, if your knowledge and use of tools is up to date, if your ideas and thoughts and you know what's going on in your profession, in your industry, then you have done as much as you can. There certainly could be someone sitting across the table from you who isn't going to hire you no matter what because they look like your parents' age. And you're like, my parents can barely use their remote control. You can't really change that. But what you can do is you can increase your chances by taking care of your side of the ledger.
Right. Because you know what? The hiring manager may be that 35-year-old.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. And I think there's also exuding that confidence. You know, you've got probably more experience than sometimes the hiring manager does, but you possess that maturity and life experience, and you can't replace that. My message to people that are out there interviewing right now is be confident.
Yeah.
And be that person they'd want to work with. You know how people buy from people? When you're yourself and you can connect. It's the same thing really in the hiring. People want to work with people that they wouldn't mind having for a neighbor. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, true. And also remember that every place you interview, you don't want an offer from. It's like, you know, every time you go on a first date, if you're single, you don't necessarily want a second date with everybody. And you might really want a second date with somebody, but they don't want a second date with you. Okay, move on. You know, not every place is going to be the right place for you to work. And you have to be okay with that because that's just life. And a culture that all they do is hire people who are, you know, in their early 30s and then burn them out. Why do you want to go there? I don't care if it is supposed to be a great place to work. So yeah, don't set yourself up as, you know, I had 3 interviews and those people seem like they were really ageist and they haven't called me back and I'm so mad. No, move on. You know, you're only looking for one opportunity. Don't whine about stuff you can't control. Fix the stuff you can control and move on.
I know it's cliche, but if it wasn't meant to be,
It ain't meant to be. It's so true.
there's something else out there and I'm going to find it.
Yeah, exactly. If they don't understand what you bring to the table, then move on and find somebody who does.
Right.
And, we can fall into woe is me so easily. It's just not helpful. It's unattractive. It's unattractive in friends, in partnerships, in colleagues.
Good point. And I want to talk a little bit about not going it alone,
Mm-hmm.
the power of networking and the power of having a good career advisor. But let's talk a little bit about networking and asking for connections, because I think some people are a little afraid to do that. And I want people to know it's okay to reach out to others. People are usually willing to help.
They are, but I think that one of the biggest mistakes people make is that when they reach out to somebody, they don't know why and they don't know what they're asking for. If someone reaches out to me, I will send them back a question and I'll say, specifically, what are you looking for from me? You'd be surprised at, how many people can't answer that question. So networking done strategically as a part of a strategic job search is wonderful. Random, go out and meet with a bunch of people. I had 20 coffees this week. Well, you're probably exhausted. Now tell me what you got out of it. Well, I got 20 more names. But if you don't know what you're looking for, just having coffee all over town with people is a waste of time. Being smart and strategic about your networking. And if you are, people are so impressed that they'll probably go out of their way to help you even more. Strategic networking is so important. The thing about job search, Michelle, is I think you probably learned with working with us is no one ever taught us how to do it. High school, college, if we believe what we're told, all you have to do is log on these job boards, go on Indeed, send out, 100 resumes and sit back and wait for the offers to come in. Well, what you're going to get is a lot of trolls, a lot of people wanting you to hire you for no money to go do something you don't want to do. At this point, as long as I'm going to be alive and you're going to be alive, people are going to get jobs mostly through other people. People they know, like, and trust, people that they've met, they knew before, or they met through the job search. It's not going to be from a job board. Building those relationships and keeping them at least alive all the time. I mean, if you meet 100 people in a job search, you certainly aren't going to maintain 100 relationships. But pick out the ones that were the most helpful, the ones that were key relationships, and really make an effort to give back and stay in touch with them. There's nothing worse than calling someone and saying, hey, it's Julie. I know we haven't talked since the last time I needed your help, but I need your help again. That's not impressive. People are like, wow, I feel used.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we teach you and walk along beside you as you figure out what your next best step is, put together a plan to get it, and then go get it. And what we do is hard to explain unless you've been through it. But most people will say to us, wow, I couldn't have done this without you. I had no idea this was going to be as good as it. I had a senior executive client recently that signed up for a 6-month program. And he was very closely allied with somebody we know really, really well. And so this person's like, yeah, dude, you need the 6-month program. Just do it. He said to me, I don't understand what we do after my resume and LinkedIn profile's done. So I tried to explain it, but he trusted this third person. He signed up for the full 6 months. He finished the 6 months. He's landed a fantastic job. And he's like, damn. He said, I could not have done this without you. I just couldn't have. And he said, this has just been spectacular. It's tough sometimes getting people to understand what we do, but we are on your side. We give you the best advice, stuff you can't get on the internet, with random people who aren't experts at this telling you how to do it. We help you. If you're willing to trust the process, we help you get from where you are to where you want to be. It's not always pretty, and it doesn't happen the way you want it to most of the time, but you will get there. You just have to put in the work. And it is work. But as I say, so is being miserable in a job. You just have to pick which work you're willing to do.
Well, and I think what you're saying is you have to be introspective.
For sure.
Yeah. And sometimes being introspective hurts a little bit because you're like, oh.
It does.
Right. And the other thing that I think people may not understand, particularly if you're just starting your job search, is that, I don't know, is it 90% plus resumes aren't even read by a human being today?
Yeah.
They're read by these platforms that just scan for keywords. And if you don't know how to navigate that, you may never even get your resume read.
Well, we're not a fan of that because that's when you apply from a job board or from a company's website. Do that. Do that because you have to. But then go on LinkedIn and start to connect with people who work there or who used to work there who can help you get your resume in front of somebody. Because if you're counting on beating the algorithms, you're not going to. People get really caught up in, I've got to have a resume that gets through all the tracking systems. I'm like, no, your resume needs to be a clear reflection of what you've done and your accomplishments using all the appropriate words to your industry and your profession. But if you're trying to trick an algorithm, you're just wasting your time. As long as your resume is a clear reflection of who you are, what you've done, what you've accomplished, then submit it and then do the hard work of starting to connect with people via LinkedIn, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
To help them get you around that. So your resume is looked at by a human.
This is great advice. And we're starting to get close to the end of our time together. I had one last question for you because someone asked me this question this week, and I thought this is going to be perfect for Julie Bauke. Someone asked me, what would you want to tell your 40-year-old self now?
We hear all these pithy phrases, and one of the ones that we hear all the time is, as long as you have your health, you have everything. And boy, oh boy, is that true. I have loved being 40, 50, and now 60. And there is something really, really freeing about you care less what others think. You're more comfortable speaking your mind. You're not looking for approval. And the downside of that is as you get older, you can have more health problems. I mean, those are the things that get harder sometimes, is that you start to feel your most confident and badass, but stuff starts falling apart. When you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, who is that old lady? And you can't hardly believe it's you. But I love the fact that I am bolder. People who've known me for years have always said I was bold, but I would say I feel more internally bold than I ever have before. And so the interior and the exterior match much more than they ever did. So I always say to people, by the time you get to be in your late 50s, you really need to start thinking about mid to late 50s or even before, what is the career or job you're going to have that doesn't require you to take direction from a 25-year-old? I get more like, no, I'm not doing that. No, no, not, and feeling really good about it. And so you step more into who you were meant to be the whole time. And so I tell my 40-year-old self, just keep moving toward the things. And I had just started in the career management field when I was 38, but I knew it was what I was meant to do. And then in 2007, when things changed at work, I call it my Sybil moment. If you remember Sybil with the multiple personalities.
Who could forget?
Something happened at work that I said, oh my gosh, this is not going to work for me anymore. Working for this company is not going to work. This is the last straw. So I was like, okay, I said to myself, I'm not an entrepreneur. There's nothing entrepreneurial about me. I can't be an entrepreneur. That same day, I said to myself, I think I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it differently. Why am I having these self-limiting beliefs? Maybe I'm not going to be an entrepreneur like some people see it, but I'm going to do it my way. Because I knew that to have what I wanted in my career, to have the impact I wanted to have, I had to go build it myself. Mm-hmm. There wasn't going to be somebody else with a job that looked like what I wanted to do. It just wasn't a thing yet. So I knew I had to go do it. And so I had to step out and do it. And I also knew that it was something that could sustain me as long as I want to keep working. And what's interesting, Michelle, is that in this world we're living in now, my insight, wisdom, and experience that I've gotten over the last 25 years of doing this is in great demand. So that's why I'm on radio and TV a lot, because I have the insight and I can connect the dots because I've been watching what's been happening in the last 25 years. And everything that's happening in the job market right now was predictable. COVID, there's nothing that's going on in the job market right now that is because of COVID. COVID sped it up, but everything, the work from home, the technology, the work from anywhere, the newer generations looking differently at work, the talent shortage, all you had to do was look at the demographics. All of this was predictable. I've seen it for a long time. And so the insight into what does that mean? Why is this going on? What's the ripple effect? How can employers combat it? Is all my expertise. And I'm 62. So I look at that and I say, okay, I'm more in demand than ever.
Right.
So I feel like I can be a role model, sort of an example, let's just say, of someone who didn't say, well, now that I'm 60, it's all over. I need to learn how to knit. That's not my thing. This is my thing. And I think that once you embrace it and you keep building your skills, I would tell my 40-year-old self, the very best is yet to come in ways that you can't even imagine. And I think if you go through your life believing that and keep moving toward things that you know you're good at and the things that people come to you for, you'll build something that you could be proud of and that'll sustain you until you do want to, sit on the porch in a rocking chair.
This is so empowering, and I love the message. And I think there's a lot of hope in what you're saying in regards to the current job market, the current atmosphere, and how we're working remotely, jobs and companies being more flexible than ever. It gives women my age, your age, an opportunity to still have impact, but maybe do it on our terms.
Exactly. But figure out what those terms are. Because what works for me won't work for me, won't work for Jane. You've got to figure out what you want and what's most important to you right now, and then ask for it and keep asking for it.
Love it.
Don't take the scraps that someone's willing to give you. That's bullshit. Excuse me.
Julie, this has been so good, so delightful. I feel really good about my path. Now I just want to get all the other women out there thinking the same ways.
Yes, you and me both, sister.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
How can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Julie Bauke, Bauke. Feel free to connect and say you heard me on here. TheBaukegroup.com. Also on Facebook, The Bauke Group, Instagram, Julie Bauke. Yeah, those are the best ways to get a hold of me. We're creating a bunch of new exciting stuff. I'd love to help more people find their inner badass and really get it out there. And personal opinion, I think we need more women leaders in the world in every way. But we've got to step up and take those reins and do it our way, not the way men do it. It's a different leadership style. Because it's different, it's not wrong. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
Fantastic. And I'll put all the ways to get a hold of you. I'll put those in the show notes as well.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle.
Julie, thank you. Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.